Okay, so let's get this charting session on the way. Let's see what we have going on for this upcoming week. Just like every charting session, I mention big events that are happening the week of, earnings that possibly are happening that will make a huge impact on the overall market. So just going off the main ones that I saw for earning reports, I know Apple is probably, I would say, the biggest one, and that's going to be Thursday after hours. Outside of Apple, if there's any other major mover, I would say Shopify would also be in that category. I believe theirs is also Thursday along with Apple. Shopify should have an impact on the way Amazon moves after hours based off the same section or sector of the way they do their business with e-commerce. So outside of that, I know we have Powell and FOMC on Wednesday. I believe that's 2 p.m. Eastern and 2:30 p.m. Eastern as well. So I don't want to chart right away. I'd rather talk for a few seconds just so you guys feel how I'm understanding what could happen. Market is extremely bullish. We closed on a heavy push Friday close. We also had multiple stocks break out of the yearly trends they were in, not yearly time frame with candles, but more so just the start of 2023 to where we are currently in the present. We are also going to be starting, I want to say May is there 31 days in April? I don't know this off the top of my head. I think May 1st is Tuesday. No, May 1st is tomorrow. So we have a new month starting with the monthly candle. I know April closed green from what people were telling me on SPY. And just to confirm that, let me double check to make sure I'm not just talking off myself. Yeah, so the monthly candle did close green on SPY. So the S&P finished green for the month of April. Outside of the monthly, though, let's get into the individual companies with charts and see what we can find. So let's do this. So there wasn't as many comments for stocks that people want me to look at. If you guys noticed any other comments with companies people want me to chart, please let me know because my Discord is currently not open. I think the last ones that I saw was the person that mentioned Microsoft, ENPH, and something else. So if anyone else does comment, just let me know so I can catch it because I did miss it the last time. People were still asking about it. But I did keep DraftKings. I kept Microsoft's on the list. I kept Netflix on the list just because I do go over that every single week. But outside of the main ones, there's not really any, I'd say, serious companies to really chart this week. I know the overall sentiment is looking very bullish. Everyone's watching the main sectors in the S&P, well, the main stocks. So Apple, Amazon, Tesla, Nvidia, Meta, more than likely, Microsoft. So we're only going to focus on the ones people charted or put in the Academy section for the lessons: Apple, Mara, Tesla, SPY, AMD, ENPH, and Microsoft. Since we are going over AMD, I don't want to chart NVIDIA as well since no one mentioned it. I do feel a domino effect happening. Whatever AMD has happened, I feel NVIDIA also will have the same effect. So let's get into the actual charting of all these companies now. As you guys have already known, Apple, we've been watching on the daily for literally the past, I want to say 4 to 5 weeks for the Sunday night charting. We are above the trend line for the daily for Apple. And not only are we above the trend line, we are also holding a pullback to the rejection trend that was rejecting on the upside. Now that we're holding the pullback, that falling trend is now going to be a support. So we're holding the support on the main daily chart. Going down to the 4-hour now, I really want to show you guys the main thing I've been watching with Apple, and it has been this rising wedge. We're holding with strength. We've broken below, pulled back upside. There's a lot of stuff that I do want to talk with you guys about Apple. Don't play the chart when the earnings and FOMC are this week. I understand the idea of like buy calls and hold. I completely get that. Market's very bullish. Market is looking very good for the start of May. I don't want you guys to just assume market's bullish, FOMC is coming up, Powell always sends us, Apple also has earnings. Amazon obviously didn't have a good earnings report, but Microsoft was good. Meta was good. We had a lot of good things happening. Don't put the persona of I have to get calls and hold. Don't force trades. Don't rush anything you're not too 100% sure of. Have probability in your favor. Always put the risk before the reward. Think about what could happen, not what you wish would happen. So going off Apple, just off the 4-hour, I'm going to keep this rising wedge trend going. And last week we did talk about this $167 a share level on Apple. That was mostly based off the previous higher high before the one we just had 2 weeks ago. So just going off the first break, that was the main confirmation for me to have a level there. If we go back on the 4 hour with the 167 a share level on Apple, it does correlate pretty well with other rejections and also bounces that held as support. I'm focused on this rejection that happened for about 4 to 5 days, along with going forward from the actual breakout. We were in the zone. Like I've always said with pinpointing a support or resistance, it's never a pinpoint to the decimal. You want to have an idea with the zone. You want to have an idea with the overall sentiment that could come with it. Don't think you have to pinpoint zones. Just put a line there, understand the historical analysis that goes with it. Don't think it's a dead on 167.01, 166.94. You just want to understand this is a support if we dip to this zone area around 167 a share. So going off Apple, I'm going to readjust the support only because since we held Friday's drop at open around 167.3 a share, and that was also the previous higher high compared to where we are now around 169 a share, I'm going to raise the support slightly a few cents. Obviously, you can keep the support zone from 167 a share to 167.50. Anywhere in that area for a pullback on Apple, I do recommend lightly buying calls on Apple if there's confirmation on buyers, if there's confirmation on maybe the 15-minute or the 30-minute with the support trends holding, along with the actual support of 167 a share. Continue to use this rising wedge support trend. Don't think that just because we fell below and broke back upside, we're not going to respect that. Previously, when we've broken below, here's a good example. Obviously, a trend line can be anywhere you put it based off where I have it. That's what I'm talking on. We've broken below this trend, and when we break above, we've always held it respectfully if it pulls back. Yes, there's a few wicks on the downside, but don't just put assumptions in of these trends did not hold, I'm not going to follow them. Notice how Apple tends to fall outside or break above this rising wedge. It's not a deconfirmation. It's not a termination of a chart setup. Keep that in mind, along with the 167 a share for support. We have a massive area with double confirmation from my personal charting I have that can hold Apple if we dip $2 to $3 a share. So don't think just because Apple opens up red and we drop massive with the overall market sentiment, whether that be S&P, whether that be Microsoft, whether that be Amazon, don't think we're going to be bearish just because we're dropping the first day of May. We're dropping right off open on Monday before FOMC. It could be a liquidity grab. It could be more room for people to load shares that they missed on the uptrend before Friday close. So don't follow the candle colors. Focus on the trends. Focus on the chart setup, use it to your advantage. So going off support, let me see if I can find a good resistance zone for you guys to have. I personally only put resistance for a tap out or a TP, as in I want to trim around this level. If we can test this level and I have any runners, I'll sell the entire position. Going off that, it's going to be very difficult to find anything specific that we can use. Everything seems to be gapped up about $3 to $4 from the current close around 169 a share. So I'll give you a rough area as to where I would put a resistance just based off historical analysis on the daily. And I like these areas. I'll make this color orange. I'm going to make the support red just so it's not confusing. I know you guys have noticed I like to have support zones either red or blue. I like to have the resistance and the rejects at orange or yellow. And then anything in between, I like the color white or the purple, just so I know it's a, like, it could be one way or the other. It's not an actual zone. It's more so this is a level that could be heavy if it respects it. So going off the zone here with the rejections, I'm looking at around 175 a share for Apple. If we use that 175, it also correlates with a previous lower high on the daily around that 175 a share. Obviously, the high here was 175.59. I'm not about pinpoints. I just want the overall zone. I want to have an idea. I want to have a mental standpoint as to what this zone could do historically. So I have it roughly around 175 a share. It can also be 174.6 to 175.5. You just want the idea. Nothing's going to be a direct rejection. If it is, you just had a good chart that day. I never expect a dead reject on my levels. And when it does happen, I don't expect it to repeat itself moving forward. And I don't get a hot head. I don't expect like, oh, it touched it here, I have to get in. I still respect my patience. I still respect everything I teach you guys and also try and stay disciplined with myself. So using that 175 level, I'm going to switch back to the 4-hour. You can easily see that this zone fill is going to be massive for us to push through, but there's not much of rejects or any type of zone in between 170 and 175 a share. So if Apple in the overall market does have that push or does show that buying pressure, don't be surprised if Apple can push $5 before Wednesday or even $5 before their earnings on Thursday after hours. Keep in mind, pullbacks has the lowest risk for calls. At this point, if you're looking at puts for Apple, I do not recommend trying to pinpoint, oh, 171 a share, I'm going to get puts. Oh, 172.50 a share, I'm going to get puts. Realize the overall market sentiment. We are very bullish, a lot of buying pressure. We're breaking out of a lot of stocks trends for rejections into the actual buying pressure for continuation. Don't try and catch puts when the market is bullish. Wait for trends to form Monday and Tuesday. Save your buying power for Wednesday with Powell. Don't try and catch what you can't see. That's the most I can say for Apple. So we're going to switch over to AMD now, and I'm going to take away a few of my drawings I have here. I did use a lot of charting over the weekend and along with Thursday and Friday for AMD. I'm going to start with the daily on it since this is the main thing I've been talking to people about. And along with the trends for this rising wedge, I am going to speak on something a lot of people ask me about, and they're also very confused with their self-charting. When you're finding trends for higher lows or lower highs, or higher highs, higher lows, whatever it is with the rising wedge or the falling wedge, you don't want to just assume I have to put a level at the lowest candlesticks for every zone that touches. I understand the idea of that, but you have to realize trends don't hold 100% of the time. Trends have wicks on the downside and the upside that will fake you out or catch you in a chase just to pull back on you. Never assume a dead pinpoint with zones, with trends, with a pattern. You have to use open mind thinking. You have to use the idea of let me wait and see how this forms. AMD currently, I had a level for AMD. I'm switching to the 4-hour right now. I had a massive level for AMD around $85.50 a share. My actual chart I put was 85.76. It's the idea that going off this rising trend for this wedge, we have held that zone and we're pushing upside now with heavy buying pressure. Going off the previous zone where there was a lot of consolidation, you have to realize we are currently back in this zone. A pullback to $88.50 a share, that is one of the main supports before we pull back to the $85.50 a share zone. AMD is currently in a heavy zone going off the last few weeks. I'm not focused on last year. I'm not focused on the years before that. When we pull up early February, mid-February, I'm going to actually delete a few of these levels. It's confusing me, so I don't want you guys to be confused as well. I'm going to extend the chart so it's easier to see this as well. This 88.50 area, I'm using as a zone from this reject before we pulled back to the support trend. This zone showed heavy selling pressure. Along with that, we tried to push back up 4 or 5 days later. We didn't touch the pinpoint of that resistance zone, but it showed heavy selling pressure lower from that zone. So we know there's not enough buyers. Outside of that, the next time it tried to contest, a lower high formed, we rejected once again on a heavy zone around $85.50 a share, $85.80 a share in that zone. It's not a pinpoint. Using those rejects, I'm trying to use that in the current time frame. That 88.5 also was used as support before we broke down to the support trend on the larger frame. I'm using that zone as a pullback. Yes, it's only going to be $1 pullback on AMD, but imagine if it wicks below and it shows buying pressure to push back above that $88.50 a share. You have to wait and let the play form. If you want to chase calls, be my guest. Just realize you may have to hold through red. You may have to hold through maybe a 30% loss, 40% loss. If you add time to your expiration, you can afford to hold that a lot longer. Don't assume, I said the same thing with Apple. I'm going to keep repeating this with a lot of stocks. Don't assume Powell's talking Wednesday. Market broke out Friday. We're having a huge end of the month trend break on the April for the monthly time frame. We're starting May, which could also be a historical good month. Don't assume based off that you should just buy calls and let it go. Yes, I am very bullish for this week, but I don't want to just buy and hold. I want the lowest risk. I want the highest probability in my favor to win. I'm not chasing money. I'm letting the chart form so I can chase the chart at that point. Let the chart come to you and then chase your entry. Let it form, buy in. Find a support zone, buy in calls. If you want to buy the breakout, be my guest. Just know the risk that's associated. If AMD does dip to the whereabouts of say 88.50 a share and it holds well for a few candles on the 15-minute, the 30-minute, whatever it could be, the next major reject, it's the same zone I just talked about. Let me make this a little bit widespread. This zone we are currently in, 88.5 on the support, 91.5 on the resistance. Realize we are back in that zone. We had a heavy Friday with green candles. A pullback is necessary outside of this zone. Don't let that think we're going to be bearish. Use your thoughts, use your idea. The more we pull back, the cheaper calls are going to be. Add time if you're skeptical. Use your patience to let the plays come to you. Don't force the play. Once the chart comes down and it shows you a formation, that's when you get in. Take your probability and use it in your favor. Don't let the chart make you break out of your comfort zone. If we push the 91.50 a share and we break out heavy, continuation will be in play. And if you can afford to hold runners, just watch the lower highs forming from the previous trends right here. At that point, we're going to use the previous lower high as the first rejection around 94.50 a share. Then we have the next one around 96.50 a share. Then we have the next one my bad. The first one's 96.50 a share. The next one before that is 99.2 a share. Those are going to be the rejections. We have a major gap fill if we break 91.50 on AMD. Until then, we're stuck in this consolidation. 88.5 is support. Major support being 85.7 area. The main rejection that we have to break, 91.50. Those are the main three levels I see with AMD. At any point while I'm talking, if you guys have questions, if you want other stuff charted, please say something. I want to be interactive with you guys. I want you guys to ask questions if you're curious. If you see a level that I may not have charted, I will break it down as to why I may or may not have it charted. I want to have questions asked. If you guys are here just to watch, that's perfectly fine. Just realize any questions you have, don't be scared to ask them. Even if you think, oh, that's a stupid question. Nothing is stupid when you don't know what the answer is. Please ask anything you have. Going off Amazon. Before I even start talking about Amazon, I'm not interested in trading it this week. I'm not interested in watching Amazon this week. Earnings were good. We still pulled back heavy on Amazon. Can you chart Meta? I will definitely chart Meta. I'll save that for the end for you. I am not interested in Amazon this week, only because we had a massive gap up on earnings and we just pulled right back before market open on Friday. I don't want to try and guess a support since right now price action is basically invalid. There we go. I love the questions, guys. More charts. Perfect. I'll get to everything you guys are saying at the very end. I'm going to stick to the usual schedule, but I'll get back to those three you guys just talked about. So just going off Amazon, I don't have too much to say about this. We pulled back in the zone. We're currently still at the trends of higher lows. On the larger frames, we have not broken these trends. Realize we are hovering above the support. If you want to pull this back more, be my guest. You're going to have to readjust it, though, if you do that. Realize we have room on the downside still for Amazon. The reason I will not play it, it was weak on Friday. The overall market was so bullish. S&P broke out. Apple broke out. Everything broke out. That was major, I feel like. If I'm being misled when I say that, let me know. But from the stuff I was watching, everything seemed pretty bullish. And Amazon finished red on the day. Didn't even have a push of any green on the larger frames. So I don't want to try and anticipate, oh, buyers are going to step in on this. I'd rather wait to see a push off a zone than a pullback after the retraction happens. I don't want to try and guess a bottom only because it was weak on Friday when the S&P was green, when Apple was massively green, when AMD was massively green. Outside of that, I'll tell you my levels. I know people like to trade Amazon, so I will say how I feel. Currently, the 105 zone is heavy. That's going to be heavy. We're currently around that zone, so it's not really a support or a resistance. It's more so in between. So I'm going to keep that level there as a white color. Since we pulled back, the main rejection I still have around $108 a share. If you guys want a lower support compared to the 105 zone, I will try and find one right now. I just don't want to put something I'm not confident in. But let's see what I can get figured out real quick. So I kind of like this area right here. It's roughly around $102 a share, give or take up to $103 a share. So we have a nice zone right there. That's roughly a $2 a share pullback on Amazon. The reason I have that there, if we go back to these areas, the previous push on Amazon, a lot of rejections right here. A lot of rejections around that $103 a share, also the $102 a share. It's a massive zone from 102 to 103. Don't think we're going to pull back there, but that's the safest risk. We also had a lot of rejections here on the 103 to 102 area as well. That is the only thing I would look for if I was playing Amazon, is a massive pullback to around $103 a share. Obviously, rejections, $108 a share. Outside of that, we have to break about $110 a share. But like I've said, I'm not too interested in Amazon this week. So main support, $103. The current zone of 105 is also very heavy. I would not be surprised if we just zone all day Monday from Amazon. The first rejection I see is 108. The next rejection I see is roughly $110 a share. So those are the main three levels I see. Let me make this color yellow. Okay. Since I had three other stuff people want me to chart, I'm not going to chart stuff that I personally put up there so I don't waste too much time. So I'm just going to stick to the stuff you guys have typed out in the chat for me to chart, just to save an extra time so you guys get what you want. If you guys want to see my charts for what I'm deleting, I will add those gracefully as a screenshot after we're done. Perez SPX, I'll do SPY, but I'm going to leave SPX for the other admins that actually trade it. I know Hassan Rippy God should be doing an analysis on it this week, so I don't want to do mine because he is a professional. I don't trade SPX very much. He knows the levels, he knows the tape. I'm going to let the people that trade it the most stick to that stuff. But I will do SPY. It's basically the same thing if you just correlate the mirrors of the charts with the candlesticks. So ENPH, someone did ask about this. If you guys don't know, ENPH is an energy stock. It's correlated with the sector XLE, which is energy and oil. I'm going to go to the daily first because we had a massive gap down from earnings, it looks like. We're currently in no man's land from what I see. I'm on the weekly now, trying to get a feel for something. We're zoning. I see no heavy bounce. I see nothing really other than a bear flag, maybe a new support forming before a pullback. The only thing I truly see is a main rejection zone that's a big jump if it happens, up to $185 a share. I don't have too much to say about this, only because this massive gap down, you never want to try and guess, oh, it's going to bounce. Oh, it's going to keep dropping. We need a few more days or even a week or so to see how the momentum moves on ENPH the next few days or weeks. We've only had 3 days since the actual gap down from earnings. I don't want to give my biased opinion because I am not too sure. I'll find a rough area of a support, but don't rely on this just because, oh, Breezy said it's support, so I trust it. Just so I have a rough idea, I'm going to mark the low from the last 3 days just so I can use that historically without having confusion. And that was around 156 a share. I'm going to go back to the daily now and just zoom back a little bit. So we have a few candle wicks right here on the daily. And along with these candle wicks, we also have a few full candles that fill on the bottom and the top and push back. So I'm liking that 151 zone for support. If we pull back more, 151 share zone looks promising. The question is energy going to be hot? Could it be a sell-off? Don't assume, but just wait for a play with high probability. If you want to play puts on ENPH, wait for a push. If you want to play calls on ENPH, wait for more confirmation for a new support zone. Don't just assume, oh, it's breaking out upside, I got to get calls. Don't get faked out on something that could be misleading. The only zone I see, obviously the resistance is roughly 185 a share. That's $20 upside. That's a huge gap. But if you want a support zone that looks promising historically, 151 a share is probably the only thing I'd be watching if we dip. I personally, I'll say this again, it may get annoying. Let a few days of EMPH play out to see how it moves. Don't think bear flag, we're dropping. Oh, new support after a heavy sell off. It has to gap fill back up. Just have probability in your favor. All I see is that 151 a share zone. Outside of that, I don't really have too much more to say about this, only because we had a massive gap down. Okay, so looking at Mara now, while I'm doing this, I'm trying to look at Bitcoin because the last time I looked, it was gapped up. So Bitcoin currently is at $29,300 a coin. Mara's going to have a gap up overnight. So don't expect it to open up at $10 a share tomorrow morning. If crypto holds the way it has been, I expect Mara to open up at roughly, I'd say 1070 a share. So almost a 7% increase in pre-market, I would assume. I know if Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever it is, pushes upside over the weekend, Mara and Riot and Coinbase tend to also gap up with it in pre-market hours from 4 a.m. Eastern to 9:30 open, basically. So I'm going to assume Mara will start trading around $10.70 a share, and I'm going to chart based off that, not the actual close. Does this make sense to everyone why I'm thinking this way? If I chart based off the close, since crypto is already pushed, Mara should gap up with that, and that's going to make the price open higher. I don't want to chart based off the close from Friday. I want to have an open mind to give you guys that, like, look into the future. Mara should gap up pre-market. So because of that, I'm putting a white line at $10.70. That's where I feel it will be at in pre-market. So I'll chart it based off that. So at that point, I'm going to readjust a few of these colors so it correlates. I'm going to delete a few that are way down here that no longer need to be there. So the main support, obviously, we're looking at this historical zone. We wicked on the downside a few times, but outside of the wicks right here, we also held a major support currently right here. When we broke below, we pushed back up with no heavy rejections for that zone. So I'm going to keep a support roughly at $9.60 a share. And I'm going to go back a little bit more. So here's also a reject that happened around $9.50, $9.60, reject here. Every time we tried to push back, it was a lower high forming. Try to push back again here, rejected roughly at $9 a share. Double topped here again at $9 a share. So we have a zone for support roughly at $9.50 all the way down to $9 a share. Outside of that, now the question is, what's the upside? I don't want to give a wide gap of $12, $13. We have to break levels before we assume it's going to hit that high. I do think crypto is bullish, so I would not be surprised if Mara breaks $12 this week. But just to stay realistic in the current time frames, I'm going to try and find a level that's roughly around $10.70 for a nice rejection. So doing that, I'm going to go back a few months, few weeks. I'm going to see what I can find. We had a few triple tops right here, roughly $11.30 a share. I like this. So now that I see this in this small time frame, about 2.5 weeks, I'm going to put a zone here, aka a level, at roughly $11.40. I'm going to make this color yellow or orange. So now I know this is a rejection color. Now I'm going to use that area and go back to the current times. Where around $11.30 does it have correlation? Does it have any purpose as to why I should keep it? We've been zoning here. We bounced off 1070. So obviously the open price I'm predicting, it's also a major zone. So 1070 area is also a major zone. If we open up there, it's going to be a lot of selling pressure, trying not to let it break upside. I have the zone around $11.30 a share. It's rejected here a few times. It's also rejected right there. Once it broke above, now we're looking for more strength around that zone. We broke back down heavy, tried to break back upside. We rejected around $11.30. Once we broke back up, we pulled back again. Once we finally held above for at least a few candles, that 1137 area was showing strength. So we know the zone. It's not a pinpoint. The zone of $11.30 is strong. So I'm going to keep that as the main resistance. Here's also another double top practically in a 2-day time frame. So we know this zone has meaning. We know it's there for a reason. It's not just a lucky guess. Go to the current time frames even more. Not much there outside of zoning. So we have a main three levels. Obviously, I told you guys $10.70 looks like a major opening price. That could be the actual price of Mara in pre-market tomorrow. That's also a heavy zone historically. So knowing that, we have 1070. The main resistance, $11.30 a share. Why is that still going? The main support that I see is $9.60 a share. I don't want to give too many levels. I just want to give you guys the main breakdown for you to have more patience. If I give you 7, 8 levels, you're not gonna understand like, oh, it's holding this level, but he also said this was 10 cents below the one that's at right now. Which one do I want to wait for? Which one do I actually want to wait and see how it does? I give less levels because it gives more patience in you, and it also makes you wait for a main zone. It's a lot different when you put in levels like this. So at this point, what level do you trust? You have 5 levels here within a $2 increment, basically. I don't like distractions. So at that point, I'm only looking for the strongest zone. So it gives me more patience. I have to be more disciplined. I'd rather wait. And if it never happens, I won't trade. I don't want to force anything. So going off Mara, main support, $9.60 area. Opening price, which is also a heavy zone, $10.70 a share. The main rejection, $11.30 a share. Luckily, it could be also $11.50 a share. So we have a main 3 zone for Mara. Now we're going over to Microsoft. Microsoft, like everything else, it's breaking out and it's actually going towards all-time highs. I'm going to take away a lot of these levels that are currently out of the picture since we have broken the daily zone. This is going to be difficult to chart, and there's not a lot to chart. That's the best part about breakouts. You're looking for the main next rejection, and if it pulls back, what zone did it break out of to have this breakout? That breakout is the new support now. First, I want to look for a heavy rejection. We have a nice little zone right here. Going off this, I'm going to put a level there, and I'm using the overall touching zone. So roughly $312 a share, I'm liking a lot. That's also correlating back to the heavy support right here. It's not pinpoint, but it's the idea of the zone. Don't ever think that to the decimal, it has to reject. To the decimal, it has to bounce. You're trying to find an overall view so you know why it's there. Historical probability, so it's in your favor. Going back to the 4-hour, where does that level I just put correlate with the time of Microsoft right now? Currently, Microsoft closed at roughly $307.60 a share. That zone I put was roughly $312 a share and 50 cents. So we have about a $5 push upside before the next major rejection. Not just any rejection, the major rejection. If we go back to the daily, that $312 share was basically the last higher low that was forming on this trend line right here. We're using that zone as confirmation. We broke out the previous zone right here of the lower high. Once we broke out of this, now we're going towards the next zone, which is going to be right here. It's a game. You're playing the gap fills. You're not trying to guess when is it going to short again. You're waiting for it to short again. Don't force a play. Wait for it to happen. Since we have the major rejection around $312 a share and 43 cents, this can also be $312 to $313, $311.50 to $313. You want a zone, not a pinpoint. I'm liking this 5 candle top around $312.50 a share. What's the support? That's the next question now. We're going off the breakout that happened the last few days for Microsoft. Using those breakout levels. We can't use the historical rejection here as support. We can, but how logical is it for Microsoft to drop almost $15 a share in a few days? It's pretty unlikely. So just to be safe, I'll leave a level there, but I'm not going to keep it as my main. I'll make it a white color or just a like off the wall color so I know it's not a major zone I'm waiting for. I want to find a better zone for a support that's closer to the current price action. So using that, I'll use this area roughly on Wednesday. I like this area right here. Obviously, Thursday had no correlation. Friday had no correlation. But historically, Could this have had any correlation? If you want to play it a little bit safer or riskier, you can move it up to Friday low before the breakout. And that level would roughly be around $303 a share. So let's leave it at that, since that correlates more with Friday and also Thursday hesitation based off the 4-hour candles. I'll make this color red. Now let's use this $303 share and go back historically. Where historically could this 303 have respected a zone based off price action? So we had a nice bounce right here. Nice rejection right here before the breakout. So far we have a few correlations. It's working in the favor of that zone. We also have a nice little dip right here. I'll put a level here to look at this in current time frames, and this zone is roughly around $298 a share, $299 a share. I'll make this blue for the time being just so I can use that in the current time frame. So I'm liking 303 for a support. I'm going to look in the more recent price action for $299 a share just to see how that looks. And would you look at that? Wednesday high, just like I had earlier. So just going off that, we have two main supports. You can choose which one you want to wait for. If you even want to wait, play the breakout if you want to. It's all up to you. The main supports I see, $299 a share, $303 a share. The main breakout gap fill, $312 a share roughly. Those are the main three zones. If you want to use the 292 as a support, go for it. But at this point, I'm only liking these main three. $299 a share, $303 a share. Both of those are support. Main rejection, $312 a share. This is going to possibly gap fill in the upside. We will see how the market works. We'll see how hot tech is. So let's move on to the next one now. I'm not going to chart Netflix only because it was not recommended. So I'm going to move on to the next one, which is SPY. And then once we finish Tesla, I'll go back to the three stocks that you guys recommended and you typed in the chat. So now SPY. I'm not going to go into depth on SPY because FOMC is Wednesday. Overall market sentiment, I'm looking for a pullback for low risk on calls. I'm bullish going into the week. I don't want to chase calls. I'd rather wait for a pullback. If the pullback never happens, I'll wait for Powell on Wednesday. I'm not going to rush any plays. I'm hoping me repeating this is making you realize, wow, if other traders do this, maybe I should try it sometime. Don't think you have to chase money to make money. You can wait. One solid trade is going to outweigh any money you make on a chase unless it's one of those continuation plays. Don't put yourself in jeopardy along with your account money just to catch what you missed. Wait for the best setup. So when I'm looking at SPY, where can I catch a pullback? That's what I'm focused on. I'm keeping on the same levels that we've had for the past few weeks. And the main pullback I would like to see is roughly around this level right here, $412 a share. Obviously, it's a $4 pullback on SPY. Can that happen? It's not about can it. It's the fact of if it does, I'm buying calls. I don't care about, oh, well, what if it doesn't happen? If it doesn't happen, I don't play SPY or S&P, whatever that correlation may be. I'd love to see SPY pull back. We're obviously at a heavy rejection around the 416 a share. That's also going off the previous higher high that formed. We're going to possibly reject this. We could gap up overnight. We're not too sure what the result's going to be. Outside of the support at 412, we have 416, which is currently the main zone. If we go to the daily now, let me delete a few of these colors. Don't want to distract you guys. Where's the gap fill if we break out of the 416? The main thing that I focus on when I'm looking for a gap fill, the previous lower highs, higher highs, whatever it could be, I'm focused on this area around here. And around this area, if we put a level, it's going to be roughly $422 a share on SPY. That is the gap fill I see. We have a lot of room to run if SPY and the overall market is bullish. I want that pullback first. I don't want to chase a breakout. So I'm going to keep it short and simple. I don't want to say too much because I don't usually trade SPY. I more so just look at it for confirmation on other stocks. The major pullback I want to see, $412 a share. I want to see hold on a pullback. The current zone of 416 a share, that is the main rejection right now. Don't think, oh, we broke 416 at open. I'm going to buy calls because it's going to keep going. Play it safe. That's all I'm going to say. Play it safe. Don't risk your money for a hopeful play. If we do break out of 416 and we trend upside, the main reject gap fill around $422 a share, $423 a share. Anywhere in that area, I see a gap fill. Moving on to Tesla now. I'm going to delete a few of these lines. I don't want to be too confusing with the trends or the highlights I have in here from a few weeks ago. So just going off the lows I had from last week, we had $151 a share, $161 a share, and then the major reject of $168 a share, also around $169 a share. When using this for confirmation, for your own personal biased opinion, you have to use what you feel are comfortable with. A lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, they're bullish. I promise you, so many people are bullish, but they're also saying the market has to pull back. The market has to pull back. Why not take advantage of a pullback to load calls? Don't just get puts because, oh, the market's going to pull back. I don't see any clear rejection zones or resistance that can basically give you info on this is where you have to short. I'd rather catch a pullback and play calls, or if your style is playing the breakouts, wait for the breakouts with buying confirmation. For me, if I was playing Tesla, I'd be focused on that zone roughly around 161 a share. 160 a share to 161 a share is going to be a nice dip buy if Tesla has a pullback. Realize in this small time frame, we are currently on the smaller reject zone. This is going to be a reject zone, roughly around $166 a share, $165 a share. I don't expect Tesla to break out pretty quick, but if it does, it will run. It will easily hit 168, 169. It could even fill the gap, which if I find a gap on Tesla, it's going to be roughly 175 area. Wait for a pullback. The main zones I have for Tesla, which I'm not going to redo, I'm going to keep it the same way it has been the past week. Main support. Obviously, if we pull back, we're going to make a higher low. So if you want me to do this just for your eyes and for your clarification, the higher low that I see is going to be roughly $157 a share, anywhere in this area. I'll put a trend line just so we can recap this next week, but I expect Tesla to do something like this. If we have a pullback, I would not be surprised if we bounce roughly around, let me get this highlight prepared. A bounce around this area right here, I would not be surprised if we pull back. So the main support on Tesla is around $151.60 a share. The main support for a higher low on the trend, the higher lows on the trends is around 157 a share. And then we have the support on a slight pullback, the zone 161 a share. The gap fill reject I expect to happen is roughly $169 a share. If that breaks out, I would not be surprised if Tesla can touch around 175 a share. And I'll leave that as yellow. So these are the main zones I have. I don't expect us to dip to 151. So if you want, I will delete that so it's not as many levels. Just use the low on the week from this previous as a actual main support. If that 151 breaks on the downside, we will trend heavy down to 145, 140 area. So going off what I just deleted and what I currently have, main support for trends and also the next support, 157 a share. The average zone for a slight pullback, 161 a share. The first gap fill in the smaller frames is 168 a share, 169 a share. The major gap on the larger frames that I see is 175 a share. Now going off that, I'm going to slowly go into the other stocks people have mentioned. Let's start with Meta. So obviously we saw Meta with earnings, major gap up, currently a bull flag. On the larger frames, where are we sitting? That is what I'm curious about. And we're almost about to fill the gap from the earnings that happened back in February of 2022. So let's see what the price action was roughly around this time frame. What can we use in the current times from where it used to be? Let me delete the levels that don't matter no more until we break more downside. And we're going to rechart Meta now. I'm going to put a level at the previous high on the first gap down from this earnings report. And that's roughly $248 a share. I am now going to go to the previous lower high based off that drop off, which will be roughly $137 a share. I'm going to make this yellow. Well, I'll make this orange too, actually. Now, I'm going to make this yellow just so it's different. I'm going to go back even more now on the daily. Have these two levels affected itself historically based off price action? We had nice support and rejections at 248 a share. So 248 has had respect historically based off price action. That's a nice zone. 237. I'm looking at this, trying to find anything possible. It's kind of just a random gap in this area. It held support pretty well. So we have a nice zone between 237 and 248. It looks like in this area for about 2.5 weeks straight. I'm going to switch to the 4-hour now and try and find something on the recent price action to see if there's any correlation that may happen. So based off the current zones, we're actually hovering slightly above $237 a share. I'm going to change this color to red now since it is a support based off price action. So we have a support at 237. The main gap fill on the upside will be 248 a share based off the earnings from last February. That's why I have that level. I'm going to go back a little bit on the 4-hour and see if there's any correlation with these two levels I put in. There's not too much on this area. I'm going to keep going back on the 4-hour. I want to get more of an ideal price action picture based off these and maybe even add another level in between the two of them. I want to try and find something that could happen. And there's not too much going on. So we know the red, the 237, it's basically right at the close from Friday. Is there a lower support that we can find to use for correlation? This area right here I'm liking. We had nice support here, held support before the breakdown. After we broke down this area and pulled back above, we respected a pullback to the $232 a share as support. We broke back upside, respected 237 a few times. Once we broke 237, we held support at 232 again. We broke below 232 and we zoned for almost a week straight before we broke out again. That's when we held 248 for support. So these three levels, obviously you can move the 232 area down, you can move it up. In this area, I see a nice support. So just based off these three levels, I'm going to go back to the current times on the smaller frame. And I'm going to use just these three. I don't want too much commotion because with the earnings gap up, we've seen Microsoft hold. Will we see Amazon hold the downside? We don't know yet. Just going off other tech though, Meta should hold and keep pushing. Will there be a pullback is the question. The major support that I see from Meta is 232 a share. The next support, which is also around the current price action, is 237 a share. The gap fill that I see happening if buying pressure picks up in tech and also Meta as an individual stock, I would not be surprised if we touch 248 a share this week or possibly into next week. So the main gap fill for Meta, 248 a share. The main support is 232 a share. The zoning area is around 237. Those are the main three zones that I see based off how I feel. So now I'm gonna, let me take away one of these. I want to take away Meta just so I can add another stock. And you guys said DP. Not too sure what DP is. DP, Jordan, DP, what's the name for DP? I want to make sure I click the correct one. DP. Oh, DB, my bad. My mistake. There we go. Please ignore my miscalculation, my misinterpretation. Okay, so I personally have never looked at this chart. Never heard of it, honestly, but I'll go off what I see based off price action, and I'll give you my personal side of how I feel. Anything that you see that I may not talk about in the next 2 to 3 minutes on this stock, please say how you feel, or if you're just you want to see what I think without you knowing anything, I can just talk and let you know what I personally feel about this. So right away, when I'm looking at the daily, I see a nice rejection here on a zone before it broke out. Just so I have a few levels I've never charted before, I want to start putting stuff in just to use for clarification. I'm going to leave this purple for now. I'm going to go back a little bit, see what else I can find. I like this zone right here. Heavy support right here. Even though it was a lot of wicks, it held support massively. So I like that a lot. I'll put a level around this area. There's no pinpoint. I just want to have a rough idea so I know historically this level and this price action had heavy support and it respected itself very well. I'll make this orange because I do know the price of this level is above the price action currently from close. It also rejected right here twice for a double top. So I do like that $11.70 a share area. I like that a lot, actually. Let me go back a little bit more. Here's a nice rejection around that $10.80 a share zone I put in. So that has historical reasoning. Let me keep going back a little bit more. See what else I can find. Nice double bottom here around there. Okay, so I'm liking these two zones. Since I don't have more than two, I want to go back to the current time frames to correlate these two zones to see what I can find. Current $10.80 a share is actually the close price. If we're going off a smaller zone for a reject, I do like this area here that has to break out, roughly $11 a share. This is going to be a heavy zone to break out of in the smaller frames based off the last 2 weeks of price action. So I'm going to make this white. I'm just going to leave it at white. It's not really a heavy rejection. It's just a smaller frame reject that may be in play. If it breaks above this, we will see a gap fill up to $11.70 a share. Since the current price action basically levels out with the lowest support zone I have, I'm going to try and find another zone that may work a little better. I like this consolidation here for support. So let me put a level right there for now. So I have $10.30 for a support. I'm going to go back to the daily and see if that $10.32 has any correlation historically. And I'm going to take away this 1080 since that basically is the close price. So we had nice rejections and support. Not many. We had a nice rejection right there at 1030 on a 2-day time frame. Also had a nice fake wick up for a gap down. So as of now, 1030 a share is showing respective price action historically. Nice support in this area. We had a few gap downs here, but it's nothing to really be scared of. If you want, you can put another support around, what is that, 980? Yeah, 9.8 area. I'll make that I'll make that blue. So we know it's like the gap down. And it also held a rejection in that zone as well. So I'm liking this. I'm going to go back a few more months just to see what else I can see. Here's another around 980, also held support pretty well. Yeah, so I'm liking these 4 levels I put in. Let me go back to the smaller frames to the current price action on the close. So these are the main 4 levels that I see. This is how I feel. If you already have this charted, Jordan, let me know what you think as well. Don't think what I have, you have to change your chart if you've already charted. Throw your input at me, what you feel you have. I'm just doing what I first saw because I've never charted this before. I'm literally going off candles. I don't know how this moves. I don't know how much volume it has in a day. I'm just talking off what I first saw with first glimpse. Main support if we dip, 9.84. Will we dip that far? I highly doubt it. But that is the main support if we break what I think is the main support of 10.32. $10.30 a share. I can see that being the logical pullback if we have one. If we break above $11 a share on the upside, use that $11 a share as the new support if we push up and pull back. That $11 is going to be heavy. It's been rejecting the past 2 weeks practically. Don't think if we break above, it's just an invalid level. Use that as support now if we push upside. The gap fill that I see is going to be roughly $11.78 a share. These are the 4 levels I see. I don't have it charted, never traded, just a lot of negative sentiment for this bank, personally looking for a good short. If we keep rejecting $11 a share, this could be a good short position in my opinion. Just watch out for the $10.30 for a bounce, and then the main support. If we break 9.84, I expect heavy downside. It's already a cheap stock, so don't assume it's going to keep dropping. Just use the levels and make sure probability is in your favor for low risk and high reward. And the last one was NVIDIA. I'm going to take this off and add NVIDIA. Any more stocks you guys have, drop them down real quick. We're closing on the last 3 minutes. I'll stay a little extra if I need to. Let's go to NVIDIA now. I'm on the daily for NVIDIA right now. And this is going to be a very short analysis because we still have not broken out from last week's levels. So let's go off the 4 hour right now. Okay, so I'm going to keep that where it is. I'm also going to add a current smaller frame rejection, roughly around $281 a share. I'll make this purple just because that's not a major. That's just a smaller frame reject based off the double top that's happened in the past 3 weeks. So major rejection for NVIDIA is 285 a share. Just so you guys know why I put that there, which I already know, but I'll show you guys anyways. If we go back to the daily, this was a major catalyst zone for rejects historically. We obviously gapped up above to 289 a share, but going off these wicks on the daily candles right here, 285 is the rough area. If you want to put a level at the high from right here, go for it. I'm not too big on that. We have to break 285 and also 281 a share before we even consider that high right there. We're stuck in this zone. So the main support for a bounce, which is respected exponentially at this point, around $263 a share. That is a roughly $14 a share drop. Can that happen? I said the same thing last week when we were at the top, and sure enough, we dipped. So don't just assume I have to get calls. The breakout will probably happen this week on the video, so I would not be surprised. But if you don't have calls already, you already missed the dip. The lowest probability for calls for NVIDIA was this past week. So don't assume it's going to break upside. I have to get calls. Wait for a pullback. If you don't want to wait for 263 a share for support, I will give you the middle support zone, and that's going to be roughly $273 a share. If you want to give us some leeway to drop more, I'll lower this down to 271 a share going off these filled candles and not just the wicks. So, recapping the video shortly and quickly. The main support for NVIDIA, $263 a share, going off the smaller zones. If you want a closer price action for a support, I'll make this purple because it's not really an ideal support that I would buy in, but $271 a share is a relative higher risk, but it also is still a low risk instead of chasing the price action up to 277 a share. So main support for NVIDIA, 263 a share. The little bit higher risk, but still a major support, 271 a share. The first breakout for the smaller frames is going to be $281 a share for NVIDIA. If we break 281, 285 will come very quick. Realize we can wick above 281 and pull back down. If we break with buying pressure, the 281 is easily going to break, and we're going to contest 285 extremely quick. Are there any more questions? Any more analysis you guys want? Any thoughts you have going into this week? Do you want any mental perspective from me to calm yourself before Powell on Wednesday? We have Apple earnings Thursday after hours. Let me hear some questions you guys may have, and if not, then enjoy this week. I'll give it a few minutes just to answer questions while the recording is still going. I'll wait about 30 seconds if you guys have anything else. It looks like you guys may be good. NVIDIA, if breaks 280, holds, calls good. Yes, so going off NVIDIA's chart, I'll explain it the way that I personally buy calls on a breakout. If 280 area, 280 to 281, if that breaks upside, say it breaks 280, 281, it pushes to 283. If it pulls back to 280 to 281 a share, if it holds that level, I'm not saying 5 minute, it holds for 4 candles. I like the 15-minute and the 30-minute. If it can hold the 15 and the 30-minute after breaking 281 and pulling back, I would recommend calls. That is low risk. If we go back to, let me find a good example. So let's just use this right here. This area right here where my mouse is, it's a lower high from the first contest of the reject. If you use this level, act like you don't know anything over here. We're only talking about right now. We push back to this area, we break the previous lower high. People may have chased calls. Why not wait to see if it holds on a pullback? Sure enough, look what happened. pulled back, it tried to hold, failed, and broke all the way back down to 263 a share, and then pushed back up. If we break 281 or 280 a share, wait for a pullback and for it to hold on the 15-minute, the 30-minute, the hourly, whatever you're comfortable with. Don't just buy off of a 5-minute hold or a 1-minute hold. Watch the larger frames. Don't think you're missing a play, because if this keeps going up, you'll have another chance for a dip buy. I promise you. Don't chase. Don't think you missed a play. If it breaks 281 and pulls back and holds, that is a good execution for calls. I'll always end simple, but I don't want to just like end on a like drastic talk that I just had. So if we do break 280, 281 and we pull back and hold, definitely buy calls there. De nada. De nada. Any other questions, statements, concerns, anything at all? If not, I'm gonna let me end this recording real quick.